morning. Let's do our hello song. Are you ready? Hello, 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 and how are you? I'm fine, and I hope that you are too. Hola, 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 ¿y cómo estás? Muy bien, espero tú también. Shake hands, shake hands, shake hands next to you. Shake hands, and say how do you do? How do you do? Good morning. Let's do our ABC song. Are you ready? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me? Good job. Okay, let's see if these words rhyme. Are you ready? Quite night. Ding. How cow. Ding. Grow show. Ding. Shell well. Ding. How now? Ding. With no. Okay, let's do the first sound that you hear in a word, okay? Near, pat, p. Reach, say, s. Tell, t. Good job. Now, 3 sounds that make a word. Are you ready? K, a, t, cut. H, a, hum. S, a, sun. F, a, fun. N, a, t, nut. Good job. Now the middle sound that you hear, okay? Pan, a. Den, e. Fill, I. Sock, a. Hun, Okay. Now we're going to take a word apart in 3 sounds, okay? Bed, b, e, d. Den, d, e, n. Jet, j, e, t. Men, m, e, n. Pet, p, e, t. Good job. Now, do you remember the word, or rather the letter? This week is M, and the sound is mouse. Good job. Here is the M, and this boy is marching. Okay, and also mouse. M for mouse. Okay, so I have this book here. It's about a hermit crab. Now, hermit crabs are little crabs that live in the sea, but they don't have their own shell. So as they grow, they need to move from shell to shell. And this is about a little hermit crab who needs to find a new home. So this question, or rather this book it's a question, is this a house for hermit crab? Hermit crab was forever growing too big for the house on his back. it was time to find a new house. He crawled up out of the water, looking for something to hide in where he would be safe from the picklepine fish. He stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Until he came to a rock. Is this a house for Hermit Crab? Turning himself around, Hermit Crab backed his hind legs beneath the rock. The rock would not budge, it was too heavy. So he stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Until he came to a rusty old can. Is this a house for Hermit Crab? When he tried to walk with the tin can on his back, it bumped and clunked. It was too noisy. So he stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Until he came to a piece of driftwood. Is this a house for Hermit Crab? Hermit Crab crawled deep inside the rounded hollow at one end. It was too dark. So he stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Until he came to a small plastic pail. Is this a house for Hermit Crab? Climbing up towards the rim, oops, he fell right in. He clawed and he clawed until he climbed back out. It was too deep. So he stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Until he came to a nice round hole in the sand. Is this a house for Hermit Crab? He poked his head down into the opening. A huge pair of eyes blinked back at him. Hermit Crab shivered as he scurried away from the big fiddler crab, peering out of its burrow. It was too crowded. So he stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Until he came to a fishing net. Is this a house for Hermit Crab? Poking his claws into the heap, he got tangled and caught. Hermit Crab wriggled and wriggled until he found his way out of the net. It had too many holes. So he stepped along the shore by the sea in the sand. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. All of a sudden, a gigantic wave tossed and tumbled pebbles and sand over Hermit Crab's head. He swirled and whirled with the tide and was washed back out to sea. Sleeker than a shark, a pricklepine fish darted out from its hiding place in the tall seaweed. Every spine on its back stood straight as a steeple, mouth open wide. It headed straight for Hermit Crab. Hermit Crab raced across the ocean floor. Scratch, 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 scratch. Scurrying behind the first creature he saw. It was a sea snail. He hoped it would hide him, but the shell was empty. The shell was empty. Hermit Crab scrambled inside as quick as a flash and clamped his claw over the opening in the shell. The pricklepine fish circled the snail shell 3 times, but he could not catch sight of the crab he had been chasing. He glided off in search of something else to eat. When it all seemed still and quiet, Hermit Crab snuggled comfortably down in his new shell. It was not too heavy, not too noisy, not too dark, and not too deep, and it was not too crowded, and did not have too many holes. At last, Hermit Crab found a new home, and it was just right. So that was hermit crab. So hermit crab lived in water, didn't he? So I thought today we would do a little bit of sink and float. So if we look over here, we have a little homemade science table. So when you do an experiment, you are looking to see what would happen. There's no right or wrong answer. You just think what would happen if, and then you see the results and you record it. So here you can see I've got 6 items that we are going to put in the water, and we are going to see if they are going to sink or float. And at first we're going to what's called predict. We're going to think, what do we think will happen? Then we will see what happens, and then we will record what actually did happen. So the first item I have is some lip balm. Now, it's plastic. Do we think it is going to sink or float? It's quite light. I think it is going to float. So I am going to record on here. I predict that it is going to float. Okay, you ready? Look at that. It floated. So therefore, it did. It floats. That lip balm floats. Okay, let's see. Let's take this out. Now next, I have quite a heavy rock. So it's heavy, and we know that rocks are on the seabed, aren't they? So I think this is going to sink. That's what I predict. The rock, the bigger rock, is going to sink. And then I have a smaller rock as well. And I think that is going to sink too. Even though it's a different size, I think they are both going to sink. Do the bigger rock first, okay? Okay, now let's do the smaller one. Yes, both. Sank. Now then, what I have here next is a piece of candy. Now, I think it's not too heavy and it's not too light, but it's got some paper here. So I think this paper is going to help it float. So let's see. I am going to say that the candy, I predict that the candy is going to float. Let's see what happens. Oh my goodness. It went almost as fast as the rock. So my prediction was it floated, but it actually sank. Okay. Let's take that one out. So now I have a wooden knight. Now he's quite heavy, but I know that wood generally floats. If you go look at rivers and things, you put sticks, you can throw sticks into rivers and they float, don't they? So let's see what's going to happen with the knight. There he is. Even if I push him down, he floats back up. It's what's called buoyant. You push something down and it goes straight up. Okay, so this was my prediction that it was going to float, and he did. Now, let's see, we have an empty snail shell. This is really light, but it is hollow as well. So I'm going to put it in. I think it is going to sink. No, I think it's going to float. It's so hollow. There we go. So let's see. So it floats. Now what do you think would happen if I pushed it down a little and we filled it up with water? Do you think it would then sink or float? I think it would. I think if I fill it up with water, it's going to sink. So let's see. With water, I'm going to say it's going to sink. So let's see. Let's fill it up with water. Let's push it down and it's a little lower in the water, but it's still floating, isn't it? It's a little lower. Let's see. It's a little lower, but it is still floating. So with water, it's still floated. Okay, now last I have some cranberries. Let's see what happens if we put the cranberries in. What do you think? They're quite dense. That means they're quite. So I think. What do you think, Marielle? Sink or float?
I don't know.
We don't know. We don't know. I think they're going to sink. I'm predicting, aren't I? Let's see. Ready? They all sank. There you go. Now then, I am going to see if there is a way in which I could make the cranberries float. Okay, so let's have a look. We're going to get a smaller thing, and this is where I'm going to need a towel, because we're going to see what happens. Okay. We're going to put a little bit of water in. Oops. Then we're going to put the cranberries in. You see, they sunk to the bottom. Now I'm going to put two different things in. We're going to see what happens. This is some vinegar. And this here is baking soda. So we're going to see what happens. Are you ready? So why do you think some of those cranberries were able to float? If we had just plain water, ordinary water, they sank, didn't they? And then we put two things in. When we put the vinegar in, they stayed on the bottom, didn't they? But then when we put the baking soda in, what happened? Putting the vinegar and the baking soda created, what did they make? They made bubbles. They made bubbles which pushed the cranberries up and made them float. It was pretty cool, wasn't it? So, Mariella has a lecture now. Reminder for her schoolwork. So, I hope you found that fun. Maybe tomorrow, perhaps you could see if your parents have any baking soda or any vinegar in their cupboards at home. And you could experiment, you could try and see what would happen if you put less vinegar in or more baking soda, but just make sure that you have a place, some towels or something, it doesn't matter where it spills over. But I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.